the truth you've been shouting is falling on deaf ears. Not because it's wrong, but because it's not their time to hear it. That explains a lot sometimes. In a world obsessed with being right, we forget one sacred truth. Wisdom cannot be forced. It must be found. Today we explore the quiet power of patience, presence, and the deep trust that every soul awakens in its own season. I am Justin Gates, and joining me today is my cohort, Michael Perry.
Hey, guys.
And you're listening to the new Ashla Podcast. The axiom Light will be focusing on today is you cannot force truth upon anyone. Everyone must discover it in his or her own time. So really, Michael, we're going to be talking about free will today and why it's important along the path of truth, the path toward truth. What is free will? What would you say free will is in the spiritual context?
You know, free will in the spiritual context is, we all have free will. Free will is the capacity to choose the direction we want in life, choose our beliefs, choose our values, choose our peers, choose anything and everything. It's also our willingness to embody things or not to. You know, I love how you first described that. I love this axiom because it ties into the law of confusion, right?
Yes.
I had a conversation this week with one of my close friends who he's a good dude, but he loves to just badger people when they're messing up or they're not acting the way he thinks they should.
Right.
And I finally had to pull him aside and was like, hey man, like you doing this is doing nothing but shaming these people and it's doing nothing but making things worse. If you want to help someone grow and become better versions of themselves, you got to meet them where they're at. Yeah. And he was against it. He's like, no, you can't keep coddling people. And it's like, it's not coddling. Like, all you're going to do is make the problem worse, I promise you, especially when it comes to being antisocial.
Well, and because they're going to turn out to be something other than what you want them to be. You know, we can't control that. And that's something that we'll touch upon today, as we so often do, to let go of control. You know, free will is one of these, it's one of the most sacred gifts of existence. Because really without it, truth, or false truth, more likely, becomes like this hollow echo. Something you memorize or that you're conditioned to do based on someone else's dogma or someone else's version of you, right?
Yeah.
And truth is not embodied in this way. It's spoken. You can speak the truth, but you're not living it when you don't take control of your free will. So the power to choose is what makes transformation meaningful. That is, you know, I teach you lots of things. Every time we do an episode, I'm teaching you. We talked about this off the air. But I teach you in a way that you have choice. You have a way to exert your free will. And I don't impede upon that because, well, I'm not controlling how you turn out, right? So you have choice. And that's what makes your transformation meaningful. I was speaking to a mutual friend of ours. And we were talking about kind of the old days and kind of the nowadays. You know, it's like, you know, you are not the same as you were before, but you are still the same in a lot of ways. You're still that bright kid. You're still that happy-go-lucky, sweet dude. But you've also built around you some things that have enhanced your authenticity. And, you know, and I was telling our friend, you really got to see it to believe it. I can't even express to you how much, you know, Michael has changed in that way. You can't force anybody to do anything. They're just going to resent you, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You know, they can say the things you want them to say, but they can't live it authentically.
Right. Well, and I think a good point you brought up here is like, yeah, I've gone through all this transformation because I've been really wanting to grow, to evolve, to become this new healed version of myself. But to all of you listening, I guarantee you 3 years ago, you were a different person. Yes. You might still be a lot of that same person. You know, I'm big into attachment styles. And one of the common things among people who fall into the area of avoidant attachment style is they're afraid to lose themselves in relationships. Mm-hmm. That is literally impossible not to do. And I don't mean that you lose yourself and you're no longer yourself, but you take on the personality traits of the people you're around. You're constantly evolving within this situation. Right. And in life, we are constantly evolving. It's just up to us if we're going to grow this way or we're going to grow that way. Right. And we got to be mindful of that because that is what free will is. You have the free will to make poor choices.
Right.
And it's the repetition of doing that that leads to life-shattering consequences compared to, I messed up today, I'm going to do better the next day.
Right. Well, and in the way of Ashla, we do not demand obedience. I don't demand obedience out of you or any of my students. And I don't preach salvation, right? I am not the way to salvation. The way of Ashla is not the way to salvation. We do not claim to possess, and this isn't the only way. I'm not the only way. The way of Ashla is not the only way. But what I do offer is an invitation, right?
Yeah.
An open hand to the seeker. Ashla is not a doctrine to recite. I don't expect you to memorize any of the axioms. There's 150 of them. Do you think I've memorized 150 of them in 20 years?
Sometimes I wonder.
No, I have not. Right? Because I look at the axioms a little different each time. So this is a path to awaken because we try to mimic the source of the universe, right? This current that flows through all things. And by doing that, we can't remain still or stagnant. We have to learn to bend and move and flow. So, there is no obedience here. There is no, this is not the path to salvation. There are other things that exist for that. This is not that thing. And each step on this path, as you've learned firsthand, must be taken willingly through agreement, right?
Yeah.
Not through, me whipping you with a stick.
Right.
You have to get up every morning and agree to do this again and again and again. But at the end of the day, we honor the sacred agency of others, their paths, even when it frustrates the ever-loving crap out of me. Sometimes it does. Not so much you, but there have been many students that I've had that just frustrate me to no end. And when they start flip-flopping and they start, trying to mix other things and change the flow of Ashla, or to stop it, to dam it up with something that doesn't fit. So, but that is their path. And we've talked about this before in other episodes where as a teacher, I just have to say, okay, listen, you've now diverted from this path, and that's okay. If that's where you need to be authentic, go with my blessing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like when we talk about not having declaring the need for obedience within the teachings. It's not obedience is what we look for. We look for people who are as involved as can be. I mean, I think back to our teachings, and I know I had someone else who was going through the teachings with me. And I mean, you gave lessons every day, and every day I would do the assignments, do what it was. And that level of engagement, it's not, you might have gotten frustrated, but there was no control. There was no belittling. There was no negative emotions towards the other person. It's just, this is where you're at, then that's where you'll be. And
right.
that's what we mean by not obedience.
Right.
Is it's all about letting people do things in their own time. And yes, we have people who, like one example I can think of, who took the teachings and then went more towards the line of letting self-agency be what declares your power and stuff like that. And I mean, it's when those type of things happen that, of course, it's like, if this is the path you need to be on, may your journey continue, but you can't have my teachings and your belief system coexist, or you're going to have chaos.
Right. They can coexist separately, and they do, but you can't mix them, because then it changes the flow of the truth, basically.
Well, it's like water and oil, right? You try to mix it up. Yeah, it'll be separated for a few seconds, but then it'll just divide right up.
Right.
And it's nothing to do with this teaching being superior. Right. It just has to do with, our teachings revolve around unconditional love through detachment, through service to others.
Yep.
As well as serving yourself.
Yes.
And this is a delicate balance that, when too much in one of these directions, can lead to darkness.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the example you gave us at the beginning here. That line of thinking where, you must force people, you must scold them and correct them, and you must belittle them to a point to get them to do the right thing. That starts to flow dangerously into self-righteousness, right? You're doing it from your heart. You're doing it for a good intent, a good reason.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're not careful, that's going to lead you off into self-righteousness, which, as I always say, self-righteousness is a cancer to true virtue. You cannot allow yourself to become self-righteous, because then you find yourself on the wrong end of things.
Yeah. Well, it becomes superiority, right?
Right.
I mean, we teach about equality, how we are all even. Even me as your student, I am your equal.
Yes, yes. And off air, I'll share this with everyone. Off air, I was talking to Heather last week or so, and I explained this to Michael too, was that yes, sometimes it may feel like I'm at a much different level than you guys. But the way I explained it to you guys was, you guys are here, I'm here too, but I'm this way, you're this way right now, right? And although you're working your way up to becoming more authentic day after day after day, I've reached a level of authenticity to where now, I don't I don't show myself above you. I'm here too, but now I'm just going through different levels here this way. While you guys are navigating this, I'm navigating this. Okay, does that make sense? So there's no one above anyone here in this example of hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm here doing this, you guys are here doing this. That doesn't make me better. That just means I'm going through a different thing. I'm going through different levels this way, but we still operate under this idea where, yes, I need you here. I need you here, even if it's really hard to be here. And sometimes you can't always be here, and that's okay. Sometimes you're a little down here. Okay? Well then, I'll come down and meet you where you are, because that's where you need me the most. But I'm never doing this thing to you. I'm never lording over you. I'm never doing any of that stuff. I'm stay here so that, yes, I could be here where you need me. But I'm also doing this too. While you're doing this stuff, I'm here doing this because I have to continue to grow and learn too. Now, on the other hand, if I'm up here and I have you down here, how can I learn from you?
Yeah.
I can't. But
Right.
if I'm here with you, equal footing, then I can be here doing my thing while you're doing your thing, and I can learn from you and you can learn from me because I've met you where you are.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's really the key thing here. I mean, everyone is on their own journey. We talk about it all the time. No matter where you're at in your healing journey, you cannot compare yourself to others, because we are all in this state of evolution, of growing, and we can't see ourselves as spiritually superior or better than anyone else, because that's nothing but ego. That's nothing but things that will get in your way of developing true, deep connections.
right.
And I see this with a lot of people where there's this high and mighty complex where they don't respect other people's free will, and so they try to control people to see things from their perspective.
Right.
And it's so damaging to the other party. I mean, it's damaging to both parties, because this person will feel bitter and resentful because these people aren't conforming. And you're going to have the people who are being shunned and being treated like they're inadequate, who develop resentment and self-loathing. And it's just this toxic dichotomy that happens between these types of attitudes. And so we need to respect others' free will as much as our own. But we also need to declare our own free will. We did the episode on radical accountability. And part of that is you are accountable with everything in your life. I don't care what's going on, who did you dirty, any of that. We must be accountable and have agency over our own lives, choices, and decisions, because only then can we learn from our mistakes and make correct choices next time. Because it's okay to make wrong choices. That is what life is. But the more you try to deny you've made bad choices, the more you're not going to be able to be better the next time.
Right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, because truth, like real truth, when we talk about truth here, we're talking about truth, like truth bombs, right? Truth. It's never forced. Truth can never be forced. It unfolds little by little for some, tons and tons for others. It just depends on where you're at when you start to seek. And there's no judgment there one way or the other. However, as we've talked about many times in our sessions together, bodily ego is easy to conquer. It's easy compared to that next ego. That's
Yeah.
that spiritual ego. You know, you're like, I have defeated you, ego. I have defeated you. And then you step off and now you land on spiritual ego. And so this is why that axiom of light, the student is the best teacher, is a very, very important and powerful axiom, because that's not a reminder for you. That is a maxim on me to remember that you're here, I'm here, right? It's not so much for you, because as a student, you're going to be curious. You're going to be hungry. You're going to be just getting after it. I already did that. I already got after it. I already got it. I already did this. But if I'm not careful as your teacher, then I may go onto that spiritual ego, which a lot of us fall victim to. And it's way more dangerous because it's empowered, because you know things and you have influence over people. And if you allow that ego to guide you, because that ego is kind of disconnected from the body ego, the one we usually talk about a lot for shadow work and stuff, you start to do this and you start to lord over people. There are many axioms about that too. And many of those axioms are talking to the masters. And they are talking to the teachers. Masters, teachers, mentors, they're all the same thing in our system, along our path. So here, because this is where truth is found for all. And if I'm over here, if I'm up here doing this, I'm never going to learn from you, and you're going to be resentful eventually. And there's lots and lots of stories over lots and lots of hundreds and thousands of years that tell us about how bad that gets. There's always like, and at the end of the day, my goal as your teacher is to see you do this with me. Then we do this together, right? Yeah. So, and that's the most proud day for a teacher. And in many ways, you may surpass me in a lot of different things. And that's my hope.
Yeah.
Because my teacher took me so far. And
Right.
I hope to take you further than my teacher did. And then you will do that for your student. And if this continues on doing this, then what a world we'll live in someday.
Yeah. Kind of like what you're saying as far as being here instead of here. One of the other beautiful things is when we get into teaching others, as we begin embodying that of the master who wants to help educate others, we're willing to be here with the student. We are only one perspective that's gathered all this information. Yes, we have hours and resources we have been into for cultivating a perspective of this lake, we'll say, on an oasis. Well, the student's coming at it from a completely different perspective, and you can learn so much from anyone you help out on this path, because even thinking you know everything, you can learn something new. You could have a complete paradox shift on how something operates.
Every single day. Every single day. That's the best part of this journey. That is the best part of this journey. So we talk about truth. What is truth? What is the truth we're talking about here?
Truth isn't just a fact. It is something that we embody. It is our ability to decipher what we feel is truth and to live that, breathe that, to exist with it. Truth is, again, like you said, I love how you brought that up, that you cannot teach someone the truth. They can only learn it on their own. Because that's something that is the hardest thing to, one, wrap your head around, but two, to start practicing. Because the more you can let go of trying to control other people's perspective, the more you can help lead them on the path till they see it for themselves without having to dig it into them or point it out. And that's, again, being an example, embodying the truth that you know to be true, and being the example of what that truth brings to light. There's nothing more powerful than that.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just a collection of facts. Those are truth, but it's not just that. Now, you were talking about the law of confusion earlier, and there's a reason why that is a powerful aid when teaching others. Because truth is not a sword, or it's not a weapon. It's not wielded It's not a dogma to be imposed on somebody. If I just tell you everything, then I hold power over you, right?
Yep.
Because if you never learn to seek, if you never learn to be pushed to find it yourself, you never earn it.
Yeah.
And then I hold power over you as your teacher, as your master, as your mentor, right? If I'm just giving you everything, then what am I teaching you? I'm just giving you things to memorize, and I'm giving you a person to come to for everything.
Right.
Now, I don't mind when people come to me. I don't mind when you come to me, because what that means is that you're seeking. You may not always get the answer you're looking for, and I know we've talked about before.
Yep.
Sometimes how annoyed you would get with me, but I was, and I know you understand this now, but was trying to teach you how to seek, because intelligence isn't measured by how much stuff you memorized. It is in the ability to find the answers.
Yeah.
To ask the question, find the answers. That is the true measure of this spiritual intelligence. And even just regular intelligence, brain intelligence, smarts.
Well, it's the truth. I mean, if you don't put effort into gaining something, that thing will become meaningless. They're
Right.
doing studies already on ChatGPT and how people who end up using ChatGPT as a crutch to solve their problems, they're literally going through mental atrophy.
Right.
Because their brain's like, I no longer need to figure out how this works, and it starts crippling itself.
Mm.
If we don't seek answers, and by seek, it means more than just asking a question and getting an answer. But if we don't put the diligence forth of gaining the answer, verifying the answer, and then embodying it, then it's just something that's going to go in one ear and out the other within a week.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're asking about what is truth? Truth is alignment. Truth is alignment with all things, and with your integrity, with clarity, with discernment. It's that resonance of your inner being, your inner self, that connect to these deeper currents of the universe. That's where the greatest truth is found. We can measure it sometimes now. We can use different systems. We can use religion, science, metaphysics, all these different things to try and measure and prove. Simple alignment with this stuff is where you find truth. It's when what you think, right? And what you feel and what you are all move in unison together as one being. It's something that is lived, not argued, not debated. It's something you live. Anybody can say anything. All the things I say on this podcast, you can come and hang out with me at any given point of the day, month, week, year, and you're going to see me living these things that I speak, right? That's truth. And again, it's known in stillness. It's known in hardship. It's known in awakening. It's known in all these different things that happen to us, right?
Yeah.
The truth is always steadfast there, is it not?
Yeah. 100%. I mean, to know a thing is good, to do a thing is God. I love this phrase because that was my issue before with my self-help guru-ness, is I have read all the books, I was learning all about it, but I wasn't putting any of it into practice.
Right.
What it was very little things. And to be consistent with to know something is knowledge, and when you embody it, it becomes wisdom, right? It is the cultivation of skills next to knowing a skill.
Right.
You can hear a bunch of songs on guitar and be like, I know music. Or you can pick up a guitar and play for 5,000 hours and know how to make music.
Right. It's true. So we're going to tie back into something that you talked about earlier about trying to control others and using these different kind of tactics to do that, and all of which fail eventually, because these people will eventually go seek help because they're messed up now, especially when we do it to people who trust us. How messed up would you be if, I sat here and used those tactics against you?
Oh, I would take what you said much more to heart than almost anyone else.
Right. And then it would mess you up, you would never grow.
Yeah.
So why do we try to force truth upon other people? Why do we do that?
Man, one of the things I've noticed with a lot of people is because they have this, at least what I've seen within my friends, is there's this belief of this is how people should be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
The old
this,
should be.
it's the degrading, the begrudging, just the shaming to try to make people act in alignment with someone else's values. You know, I talked about in another episode. I had a lot of friends who gave me a lot of crap for how long I lived with my mother. But it's like I never had cared about that comparison. That was them being bent out of shape. Some of them are now back living with their parents, and I'm out on my own. And I don't care.
My mom lives with me. It's not weird.
No.
I don't understand.
But it's just it's one of these things where we are all on our own journeys, and when we try to control other people to meet our values not even the word I'm looking for, to match the way we believe life should be,
Mm-hmm.
the more we will be met with resistance, resentment, and frustration on our own end, because all we're trying to do is control people and make them act not like themselves. And there is nothing people hate more than being forced into situations.
Yeah, consciously or unconsciously. And it's the unconscious stuff that really mess people up. What about people who love us deeply, right? Doesn't fear play a role in this? You know, maybe they fear when they see us on a path that we're walking, and they worry about where it's going to lead.
What's like how many parents try to tell their kids you need to be a doctor or a lawyer?
Right.
And it's like they don't do that because they're spiteful. They want their kids to have a miserable job. They just want them to be successful.
Right.
Which is also another big part of this control aspect I'm talking about. Because through this map of where we should be in life and how we should behave, we end up it's through concern for the other person not meeting up to our vision of the way the world works that leads them to that path. I'd say more often than not, it's out of love. You might have those jerks in your life who are just doing it to cut at you, but often there's good intent behind it. Just
because sometimes it's love. We want to spare others pain and misery, or we want to help them awaken faster. That's something that I see on the paths that are kind of adjacent to ours. Those kind of similar spiritual paths. It's love. It's love. They don't want to see, I don't want to see you hurt. I don't want to see you suffer. But I let you.
You know, it was one of the hardest lessons. It was one of the hardest lessons when I started down this path. Once I started realizing all the self-sabotaging, all these unconscious agreements I had made with myself. Once I started on this journey, I started realizing, wow, this is what's been holding me back this whole time. I wanted to bring everyone I knew on the trip, and a good half of them were like, all right, bro, you do you. And like, some were curious, some were interested, but it really hit me very shortly into this, that this isn't a path that you can just bring everybody on. You can always keep the path present, again, living by example, which I've noticed has been the strongest way to bring people to this path.
Right.
Next to trying to be like, no, look at these issues you have and what you need to correct to not have the struggle you have. This depression, I can tell you where it comes from and how to fix it. And it's like, no, do not do that. That's a dick move.
Sometimes it's love.
That's what it is. But
I don't want to see you hurt, but I'm going to let you.
Yeah.
And I did let you. I did.
You did.
And you may know this or not know this, but there were times where it hurt me so bad to watch you walk through some of these really dark things that you're walking through. And I wanted to swoop in like Superman and say, you know what? We're going to avoid this part. We're going to not do this part because I didn't want to see you suffer, but I let you. Because you needed to, right?
Well, I think this ties into one of the most important things when we are trying to do the opposite of assert our will onto others. Mm-hmm. If we respect others' free will, what you did for me was exactly this. Mm-hmm. You saw me suffering. You gave me guidance as far as just when I would ask you questions. You wouldn't give me any type of, what was the word?
Definitive. Yeah,
no answer. Definitives, but
right.
It's something I struggle with. Why is the word escaping me now? You wouldn't give me your opinion. That's what I'm looking for. And that's something that I still have yet to master. But The point I'm getting at is, if you want to help people who, as you're on this path and they're kind of not there yet, holding space for people suffering, just sitting in the mud with them. All right. It's not about telling them how to fix their life, but creating a space where they feel safe enough to talk about their problems. Have you ever noticed if you go and vent your problem to someone, you figure out the answer all on your own?
Yeah. Amazing.
It's amazing. Be a space where people can come and dump that stuff. Without judgment, just with love and care. Which is what you gave me, and it helped me work through my own stuff. Without answers. Made me a seeker.
That's right. That's right. Sometimes it's this false sense of urgency. I want to shake someone awake before they fall too complacent, or shake them before they fall into some path that we don't understand. And this leads us to kind of beneath all of this stuff is kind of this discomfort with the uncertainty of the unknown. You know, I embrace the unknown with wide open arms. You know?
Yeah.
I do. Because I have trust. I have faith that I'm going to be fine. What's the worst they could do to me, Michael? Kill me? Ooh. You know? Then I just become a ghost and I get to haunt things, you know what I mean? But it's this discomfort with the unknown, uncertainty, death. You know, death is a big one. We've talked about this before, so I won't go down this rabbit hole, but it is this urge to refuse to sit with this tension of another person's free will and what they're going through. You know, this refusal to sit in the mud with them, as you said. It's difficult to do, especially if we love that person.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really difficult. And if we have a lot of history with them, it's super difficult. And when we have these different titles like dad, mom, brother, sister, friend, whatever, those compound the problem too. You know, when we have people like that, when we have people that are straying from what we think is the best, we just got to sit with them like this and sit with them in a way that they understand that I'm here with you. I don't care where your path is going. I'm going to sit with you here as long as I can. You may not be able to sit long, but you sit there as long as you can, because maybe they decide that they don't need you anymore. And that hurts too. But if you are here to serve and to teach, then you must learn to do this. You must learn to do this. You must learn to put away your pride. You must learn to put away your ego. You must learn to be humble and not arrogant.
You know?
Okay?
Well said.
Trying to force truth. Here's another thing. And this is in the realm of ego, both the bodily ego and the spiritual ego. Trying to force truth upon people is rarely about them.
Yeah.
It's often this attempt to ease our own problems, our own anxiety, or our own fears.
Yeah.
And we try
my
to
people-pleasing nature, 100%. As I dove into it, I found it easier for me to dedicate myself to other people's problems so I wouldn't have to deal with my own. Let me be accountable for your stuff so you can be accountable for my stuff. You'll be the reason I'm not doing well in life while I try to save you from all the forest fires you're lighting.
Mm-hmm.
But at least I'll have a good excuse on why my life's not together.
Right. That's exactly right.
That was a hard truth. When I realized that, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, bro, what is wrong with you? But then comes the grace, the understanding, and then once you know better, do better.
Right. But, that's a very common problem along this path and paths that are similar, is that we want to run out and save the world, especially when we start to learn stuff and we start to feel empowered and we start to learn things that others don't know. And then we start to walk this fine line of serving. I know better. You can't do it without me. You're wrong. And you go off into the self-righteousness but you're trying to save the world.
Yep.
Stop trying to do that. This is something that I taught you very early on as a warning to you as you start to unfold, as you start to step into this new world. you're going to find yourself, I don't know any other way to say it, but you're going to start to find yourself feeling like you're above them, like you're better than them, because you start to tap into this power that they don't seem to be consciously tapping into. So you want to save them. You want to save everyone. Can't. You weren't meant to. You're meant to walk this path and serve those who cross it, right? Not offering them salvation, because you can't.
You're planting seeds, not trees.
Yeah, because
That's
here's
the best thing
thing.
you can do. You know, we were talking earlier about living by example, and I truly believe that is you end up spending, and even people who are not into the healing scene, most people in life are going out trying to save the world in their own way. Everyone wants to fix the world from the outside in, when the only way we can make real change happen is from the inside out.
Yes.
Being that example, being that light, that role model, that representation of virtue.
When we try to impose truth, we violate the very truth that we claim to serve. You can't have it both ways, because truth in its highest form honors sovereignty. And you cannot serve people from this empowered place without honoring that sovereignty in each and every one of us. This is the paradox. Yes, we are all connected. Every single one of us, whether you want to believe it or not, you are energetically connected to literally everything in this universe. And it doesn't matter if you believe that was God that did that, the Holy Spirit, the force, the universe, whatever. We are still, no matter what the source is that you believe this came from, we are all interconnected. Yet, we are also sovereign in that we have free will. Okay. And our souls must be free to reject things before it can fully accept things. If there's no choice in the matter, if there's no choice involved, then there is no growth. There is no transformation. And this is the problem we see with many religious systems. And I won't call them out, because they all don't operate the same thing, even within that same different religious systems. Because no, it's about this. All this dogma that was created thousands of years before you were even born. You're going to create dogma on your own, your personal dogma. We all do it. That's a human trait, I think. We create our own dogma. But better to have our own dogma than to just blindly accepting the dogma of another, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are meaning-making machines. So we will always try to figure out how everything works. And religion, for a lot of people, is a very easy way to wrap their heads around morality, culture, and the understanding of the universe. Or God. I mean, I was Christian most of my life. I still firmly believe in God, in Jesus. I just see it now from a
Love old JC, man. It's my dog. It's my dude.
The way I look is I went from 3-dimensional view of God to like a 5-dimensional view of God.
Yeah.
He's not some person pointing down. He is everywhere and everything.
And you know what's funny? All these years, and I've talked to you about this before, just kind of in guy talk, right? People are usually so blown away that this path is very much influenced by the idea of the Christ, the path of the Christ.
I was going to say, what would Jesus do could be a slogan that represents all the teachings, right? Like,
deep down they could.
Yeah.
Now I get it on the surface, because people see the surface of a thing. You know, they don't see some of this. You know, I have this friend, this pastor that I work for. Every so often on a Sunday, I wash the building for him, and him and I are starting to get, become friends. And you know, he was kind of blown away when I was sharing our path with him, and he's kind of cocking his head like. Now, I say pastor, I'm assuming everybody understands that this is a Christian pastor. Non-denominational, right? No dogmatic attachment to some part of Christianity, but just a non-denominational pastor. And, you know, I kind of bent his mind around, because it's like, wait a minute. He's like, that sounds awful familiar. Well, it should. It should. It's my belief that the Christ taught and walked a universally foundational path, and taught a universally foundational teachings, right? So yes, of course. You know, my book sold way more to Christians than it did to anyone else. But by and far, like No, not even close. Okay. So the point is, we talked about this on a different show, judging a book by its cover, you know?
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, there is something powerful about, and we don't borrow and assimilate teachings here. Our teachings are universal. They are meant to be universal. They are not, I guess at the end of the day, if you look at our teachings, they are universal truths with the dogma stripped away. The stuff that just gets in our way. I have my own dogma, and you developing your own dogma around this path. As long as we don't impose that on others, it's fine, because we have to. I think it's a human thing, and I don't know exactly where that comes from, but it just seems to me that all humans are dogmatic one way or the other, and it just seems to be in our nature.
Yeah. Well, it's like the story Marissa shared on the Soluna episode, where she was talking about the 4 blind men going up to the elephant, and they each had to describe the elephant being religion. And one of it grabs the leg, and it's like, it's as firm as a tree. The next one grabs the ear, and it's like, no, it's more flappy, like a wing. The other one grabs the trunk, like, no, this is unique. This is like this. And they all had different perspectives on the exact same thing. And I love that analogy, because when again, being Christian my whole life, I never tried to drift too far from my faith. But I always saw so much truth in different teachings from other religions, like Hinduism, Buddhism. Not that Buddhism is necessarily a religion, but enough so we can call it.
I think it's been turned into one, yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, how can these be wrong and mine be right? And I see flaws with mine. I remember being a kid and going up to my parents like, what if a guy gives to his community, does all he can, doesn't believe in God? Does that mean he's going to hell? And they're like, yeah. And you're telling me the person who abuses his wife or whatever, like, he's going to go to heaven because he believes in God? And they're like, yeah. And it's just like, I always had such an issue with that growing up, because I'm like, that shouldn't be how things are.
Right.
And it's just like the core lessons from every faith are the same. I mean, you look at Christianity, the Holy Trinity is exactly this. You have Jesus, which is forgiveness. Forgiveness for others, but above all ourselves, for our sins, for our humanness. You have the Holy Spirit, which is the bit of God that resides in me, in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then God as a whole, which is everything around us. The orchestration of this ebb and flow we exist.
Yeah. I heard somebody tell me once that the Holy Spirit was the administrator of the universe. Kind of that thing that just administrated the everyday functions of the universe. I thought that was kind of interesting, because I've heard people compare the force, or say that the force is the administrator of, the glue, the administrator, the stuff that happens underneath where we don't see it. It just, kind of happens, like if you work in an office, if you work in a big office, there's a lot of administration stuff going on that you never see, you never hear, you don't have anything to do with it, yet the office just continues to seems to run. Even if you remove certain people out of the equation, it just keeps running. I always thought that was kind of a fun analogy too.
Yeah, that is a good one. Almost like the river is the universe is God, and then the water is the Holy Spirit, the force flowing within this riverbed.
That's what I love about this. We were talking about earlier how we don't have, I don't impose strict obedience on this path. There is discipline. There are rules, but I prefer you to have self-discipline, right? It's not like we just do whatever we want, because there is an administrator kind of behind the scenes pushing us along this path. So let's circle back to the law of confusion from this perspective, this journey of personal discovery. What does that, explain that to me? Why is this journey of personal discovery and the law of confusion and free will and all these things, why is that so very important, not just along our path, but just to live in this universe?
Well, whether you like it or not, you are here. One way or another, you are on the path of personal discovery. It is up to you how ignorant you want to be to yourself, how aware of yourself you want to be, and what you want to get out of life. I know a lot of people that are really happy with a very simple life. You know, I've talked to a few homeless people that are happy being homeless because they have free agency. They don't have to work.
Mm.
You know, but there's also people who are rich and tons of money and they're miserable. The journey of personal discovery is figuring out, as the Hindus call it, dharma, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is finding out your life's mission. I think in Japanese culture, it's ikigai. The more we invest in understanding ourselves and developing ourselves, growing ourselves, and this is not by any means a definition that you can go look up, because it's all about your life. What does this mean for you? You know, is it cultivating friendships? Is it working your dream job? Is it starting a business? Is it having as much time as possible to be home with your kids? The more we go on this journey, and your question mainly was how do these all these things tie in? It is up to us to take the steps we need to take when we take them. And often it'll happen at moments that we don't plan for it. I know a lot of my journey on this path has been almost thrust upon me due to my dark night of the soul. Through my chaos, my trauma, I was forced to look in the mirror. And after seeing myself for who I was, I became hooked, for lack of a better word, on understanding myself and working on these insecurities and these self-destructive patterns. And that's been my path. You know, I talk a lot about psychology on this podcast. That's my dharma. I love psychology. It's something I can effortlessly read and research, and I never get bored. I never go brain dead. I am engaged and enthralled in it because it fascinates me.
It shows.
But most people are not like that. Most people I talk to about psychology kind of just like, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And that's totally fine. That's not their area of expertise. I know a guy who, like, he's not great at math. He probably wouldn't do good in college, but this dude could take apart an engine with a blindfold on it, put it right back together. And that's because that's his area of intelligence. That is his dharma. So the more we get on this journey, the more we allow ourselves to step into the unknown with trust and take these leaps of faith in self-discovery, you either live a little or you'll learn a little. And that's what life's all about.
Hopefully both.
Hopefully both. But it's fine if you stumble and fall. It's fine if you don't find the right thing right off the bat. At least you'll have one more thing you can knock off the list of that's my path.
Right.
And
it's none of our business, really, how you do that.
Yeah. And that's where the law of confusion ties in. The more you allow yourself to explore the unknown, the more this confusion lifts. The more you will start seeing things clearly. One of the things I came to love is when I first met Justin, I was into self-help books, stoicism, all these things. And I had it through the lens I was looking at the time. Now that I've learned more about myself, I've developed this new understanding. I've been revisiting those books. And it's like reading a whole new book because I have a whole new lens I'm looking at it through.
It really is.
And it's just like I wasn't ready for those messages at the time. I got a lot from those books back then. But now it's a whole different meaning.
It made for great conversation. You know, you tend to be the smartest guy in the room. You do a lot of reading. Does it equate to much? I don't know. Usually not. If you're just able to speak and not live, right? That's what we're talking about. Knowing something is half the battle. As to quote G.I. Joe or something. I think I heard that when I was a kid. Right? But you have to walk it. You have to live it. You have to. And that's because that's the only way you can understand it. That's the only way you can grow with it.
That's how knowledge becomes wisdom.
That's right. And just like no two paths are the same, no two awakenings look alike. Right? Because we get there from different things. Like each person carries with them different wounds and different beliefs and different traumas, and they have different timing and they have different states of readiness. What's clear to one, the other may be blind to, right? Yeah. So you can't rush somebody into revelation. You can't drag them, with a big rope to clarity. You can't force them to transformation. You can only plant seeds and invite them. Invite them to grow. Invite them to transform. Invite them to see. That's all you can do, because when you're trying to wake someone up before they're ready, it's like, we've used this analogy before. It's like pulling a seed from the soil before it sprouts. It's like you plant something and then you go check it every day. You dig it back up and you check, still a seed, and you put it back in there. It literally halts the process that you're trying to help help along, because as we said before, that a lot of that really important work, the most important work, happens beneath the surface.
Yep.
Okay. So
When it's practice, 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 right? I mean, as you're
yeah,
describing this, it takes me back to like my whole thing of learning to let go. The
yeah,
universe made sure I had to learn it the hardest way possible. And man, it was humbling having to realize I can't keep just digging this up. Am I healed yet? Am I healed yet? It's like, no, this is its own time, its own pace. I know what I need to know. I can keep understanding myself better and using this to learn, but this is not something I can just rush along. There's no thinking my way out of it.
right. And I've heard people say this before as an argument. Well, I just can't be indifferent. I just can't. I can't look the other way. I can't be indifferent. Respecting another person's path is not indifference. It's patience. It's trust.
It's being
It's
supportive
letting
of
go
where
of
they're
the
at.
need to control. Yes. Right. It's that spiritual maturity to say, look, I see where you are. I trust your path. I will not interfere with the soil of your soul. I won't pull your seed out every time I get a wild hair at my behind. you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think another important thing is it's like, some people do take really bad courses in life. And you can
Hmm.
try to help them sort of see where they're going, but it doesn't mean you have to follow people where they go. If someone takes a really dark turn in their lives, it's good to be there for support, but sometimes you got to protect your own peace and step away and create that distance. And it doesn't mean to write them off or to exile them, but it's to give them the space to become who they need to become, to go and learn the lessons they need. And sometimes that may be necessary for people in our lives.
Right. So let's move on to the role of the teacher and the seeker, which on our path, the luminary is the same thing. Those are two things that they are, right?
Yeah.
So as luminary, we do not stand above. Again, remember, we stand beside, we walk beside for as long as we can. Sometimes it's not very long, but sometimes it can be a lifetime. We're not here to convince anyone of the light, of the truth, of our path. We're simply here to embody it. That's how we teach it, to be it and our being, to walk the talk, right?
Yeah.
A true teacher does not demand belief unless you are Jesus, unless you are, but I'm just a human. So, I can't demand belief, especially not just demand blind belief in me.
Yeah.
I must radiate alignment with the path, with the teachings, live those teachings to my best effort. I don't always do it. Sometimes I fall short, right?
Yeah.
But I always try my best to be humble, to be clear with my words and my actions, and be as graceful as I can. That's what that.
One of the things I've realized is like when we do try to help people, some of the people I've worked with is it's like they'll tell me about an issue going on, and it's like I'm not as good at you when it comes to not having an opinion. But one of my favorite tactics to do with clients is it's like if they have an issue going on and I see sort of what some of the behaviors are around it, I'll be like, hey, I see what you're going through and that really sucks. Like, you should look into this topic and, look into it. Tell me what you think of it. Bounce it back at me.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so I'll have them go and research something like cognitive dissonance or attachment theory or whatever, and they'll dive into it and they'll come back and usually they'll be excited to share all these things they've learned. And I won't necessarily curate that, but it's being able to meet them where they're at without judgment, to be able to just take in what they're learning and be like, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that
Right.
I could see that. And sort of being a mirror for them to now take this information and see if it sticks with them, if it's something that can apply to them or what they can grow with.
Yeah. So when we walk as the teacher, when we be the teacher, the seeker will come when they're ready. They will cross our path when they're ready. We talk a lot about how you and I built this relationship. I was a teacher. I am a teacher. You weren't ready when I first met you. You weren't ready for many years, but you came back when you were ready. You crossed path with me again. You sought me out, right? It's out of the blue. Just hit me up. The seeker will come when they're ready, not when we shout, hey, Michael, are you going to get with the program sometime in your life, right? Not when we shout or when we demand, but when our life whispers something that they remember. And that's usually just in the way we live, in the way we act, in the way we, again, walk the talk. Words mean nothing when they're not lived. I'll say that again. Your words mean nothing if you cannot live by them. If your philosophy or life path cannot be practiced, I would suggest to you that you crinkle it up and throw it in the garbage, because it's not worth the paper it's printed on.
And one thing just to throw out there with that is it's okay to dabble and try new things, see if it sticks. In fact, we encourage, when you learn something new, something you're like, that could really benefit my life, put it to practice right then and there. Don't sit on it for a week. Jump into it. If it works, great.
Prove it to yourself.
Yeah.
Can you live the words that you're speaking? If you cannot, then again, I would suggest to you, for your own good, to move on to the next thing and try to find something you can actually live with. Because again, words mean nothing if they're not lived, and that's why we don't impose. And that's why we don't chase people. We don't force people. We just become, and the seekers will find us when we do become. And in our becoming, others will see and then remember within what is possible. This is the way of Ashla. We reflect, we serve, we shine. Not above, right here. And we trust that those who are meant to awaken will in their appointed times. So, it's just the way it is. Do you have any final words before we move on to the affirmations today?
A couple things I want to throw on this topic. When we start on this path, or wherever we're at in life, whether you're there or not, the greatest enemy to truth is pride. In my opinion, I have seen this everywhere, and I have been guilty of it so many times, where I don't want people telling me I'm wrong. I don't want to be seen as wrong, and I will hold my ground to a point to a fault. And that is something I have spent a lot of time working on, is being able to be receptive to constructive criticism, to be able to evaluate my opinions, and being willing to be proven wrong. Mm-hmm. That is one of the greatest skills you can have as you learn to, one, claim your free will and cultivate it and grow it, but also to help others in theirs. Is to keep that in mind, all right? Don't let your pride get in the way of what could be growth. Don't let pride foster ignorance and arrogance.
Well said.
And lastly, like everything else we teach here, practice. Practice, practice, practice. As I tell you about these changes I've made in my life, it was not something that happened with the flip of a switch. It took me having to humble myself, having to deal with hard conversations, and it's still something I work to this day. When I get into some heated conversations, it takes a lot for me to be like, whoa, I'm in my head right now, my ego showing. I need to bring myself in and actually listen to what's being presented against me. Mm-hmm. And it'll probably be a lifelong practice.
It has been for me, not in all areas, but in many of them. I'm still doing this too. I'm still growing too. So as I've grown to do these last few shows, and I'm really starting to like it, we're going to do an affirmative prayer before we move on to the end of the show. So close your eyes. Divine presence, source of all light and truth, I open my heart to the sacred rhythm of the universe. I release the need to control, to persuade, or to push. I remember truth blooms only in its own time. I honor the journey of every soul, knowing that each path is unique, each awakening is sacred, and each revelation arrives when the heart is ready. May I embody the light with humility. May my presence be an invitation, not an imposition. May I be a mirror of faith, not a hammer of opinion. May I walk in patience, with grace as my guide. I trust the force that flows through all things. I trust the wisdom within others to awaken. I trust the light within myself to lead. I do not force. I do not fear. I simply shine, and so it is. Our affirmations for today. I honor the path and timing of others. I trust that truth cannot be lost. It is always waiting to be found. I embody the light without needing to prove it. I release control and embrace sacred patience. I choose to walk in truth and invite others by example. Our journaling prompts for today. Where in my life am I trying to wake someone up? What do I fear will happen if they don't? What truths have I discovered only when I was ready, not when someone else wanted me to be ready? How did that timing make the lesson more powerful? And what does it look like to live in truth without trying to impose it? How can I embody more of that presence? And for our exercise today, calling this one the mirror of grace. Take a moment to breathe deeply. And when ready, let these questions move through you without judgment, only awareness. Remember a moment when someone tried to force their beliefs onto you. Maybe it was subtle or a really pushy opinion, an instance that you should see things their way. How did it feel in your body? What emotions rose up in you? Did you feel inspired to change? Or did you resist? Did you withdraw or close yourself off? Now recall a time when someone simply lived their truth, calmly, humbly, without preaching. Their way of being lit something inside of you. How did that presence affect you? Did it feel safe? Did it make you curious? Did it move you to grow? Then turn inward and ask yourself, where in my life am I trying to force awakening or understanding onto someone else? Is my approach rooted in fear, misguided love, or in trust? How can I shift from pressure to presence, from control to compassion, from urgency to patience? Now remember, do not judge these answers. Accept them for as they are. Make note of them. Move in the direction that you think you need to move in to better yourself. Let grace be your mirror. And let your presence, not your persuasion, be your teaching. So, I'm going to close this out with this. Truth cannot be forced. Growth cannot be rushed. You cannot command awakening. And that's what makes it sacred. It's earned. In the way of Ashla, we remember that every soul walks their own spiritual path. Sometimes they'll circle the truth, and that will annoy the ever-loving you-know-what out of you. Sometimes they'll avoid it altogether. Sometimes they'll come crashing just into it, and then it's just a big mess. But we let them. We always let them freely. We always let them be sovereign in their will to explore and find the truth. You are not here to wake others up by shaking them. You are here to stay awake and let your light be that invitation. Plant those seeds, right? You must be the calm presence in a world of chaos and noise. You must be that living truth, not necessarily the loudest voice. The universe, the force, God whispers to us, taps us on the shoulder. You cannot force truth upon anyone. Everyone must discover it in his or her own time. And let that truth free you from the burden of controlling, from the fear of other people's delays and misguidance, and from the illusion that awakening must look one way and never the other. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you guys spending this much time with us every day, or twice a week anyway. We know how precious your time is, and we really, really do appreciate it. If you could do us a favor, share these episodes out far and wide for us. Help us grow our reach so more people can be impacted by our lessons and our shows. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucium.
Ad Lucium.